for me, the snark, it's like the snark and the violence and the social commentary are like my three poles. And I can go further in each one the further I go in the other two. So like the funnier it is, the more social commentary you can do, and the gorier I can make it. And the gorier I make it, the more social commentary I can have, and the sillier I can make. Like those tensions, it's like, if they're all right in the middle, okay, that's fine. But if I can make all of them go to 100, it gives me a lot of runway to just have some fun.
This is Story to Count with Jen Jumba. In conversations with writers, something magical happens. And as readers, we begin to see them as human beings and not just the name on the spine of a book. My hope is through these conversations, you learn about their craft and them as a person. You'll become like me, fiercely loyal, want to read their current book, entire backlist, any future book, or any book they've learned. And when you see their name, you'll want to support them, not only as incredible storytellers, but also the thoughtful individuals you have come to know. Super excited because my guest today is Elizabeth Rose Quinn. She is a novelist and a screenwriter, graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in English from UC Berkeley and a master's degree in marriage and family therapy. Elizabeth was born and raised in Berkeley, California. She lived in LA for 15 years while working in production and writing for television. She's married with 2 children, currently lives in New Mexico. In addition to traveling and exploring nature with her family, Elizabeth loves rolling fresh pasta, swimming in the Pacific Ocean, and looking for rainbows in the desert sunsets. Her second novel, Payback, which we're going to be talking about today, just published last month and has been described as Knives Out meets The White Lotus. Agreed. It is the perfect description. On the cover of the book are the words, a thriller. And while I don't want to get caught up in genres, because I think sometimes it can limit us as readers, I want to say I have never laughed out loud in public places as much as I did when reading this book. So needless to say, I'm super excited to talk and laugh with Elizabeth Rose Quinn.
Oh my gosh, Jennifer, I feel like that was on par with my husband's marriage proposal. I'm like flattered and emotional.
Well, this is a terrific book. Do you want to kind of set the premise for everybody who's listening?
Sure. So Payback is my ode to that kind of Agatha Christie locked room style mystery. But the locked room is pretty literal because it takes place in a pay-to-stay prison system, which is 100% real, and they exist all over the country, where not only are characters, but also people in real life, they go to jail Friday through Monday, and then they go back to their lives during the week. So our inmates are there for that dead week between Christmas and New Year's, and their very abusive guard has decided this is the week that he's really going to bring all of his terrible intentions and manipulations to their beautiful conclusion. But before he can do that, he is murdered. And when the women wake up the next day, they realize, oh no, one of us did it, and we have to stay in here together to figure out which one.
It is a spectacular book. I mean, even from the first line, the officer, Steve Bard, had been a creepy kid. He himself was the least bothered by his level 10 creeper vibes, with his parents being a close second. So, I mean, he knows he's not a good dude. He knows he's manipulative. He knows he likes to play on people's emotions. And so he has this wonderful grand plan to do this during, as you said, the dead week between Christmas and New Year's. And I just have to laugh at all of these characters. This is a great ensemble cast, all a little bit quirky. I mean, because we all as human beings are a little bit quirky ourselves, right? And I found myself laughing and trying to describe this to people. And I think I told you a little bit before we started, I was talking to one of my teammates on my crew team, and she's like, oh my gosh, I have to read that. And then the rest of the team was like, well, I want to read it too, just based on the description. So this cast of characters, how do you create this? There's somewhat of the, yes, Knives Out meets The White Lotus, but given my age, I'm thinking like the real world, like 7 inmates were picked to serve in a pay-to-stay during the week between Christmas and New Year's. I mean, what could possibly go wrong?
Well, they're not here to be nice. They're here to get real. I mean, let's be. I think it started with the premise already is so tethered to the setting. So I wanted to make sure that the people who were serving time what were the crimes that could allow somebody to have this particular kind of incarceration, this kind of privileged separate incarceration that you pay $200 a day for. So what were the crimes that someone could commit? And then which of those crimes were interesting? Who would commit those types of crimes?
Right.
What version of a person who would commit crime X would be in conflict with somebody else who committed? Because if I have everybody they've all committed crime B, maybe
Yes.
they're not actually going to get, as intensely interpersonal. But if you've got people who have done all these different things with all these different motivations, and now you've picked them to live in a house, right? Like you've put
Right.
them
Live in a
together.
jail. Right.
Yeah. They need to figure out, normally it's just like we show up, we're not here to make friends, we do our community service and bye. And so now suddenly they're in this position of, we actually have to work together. And I kind of, at one point, somebody said, "Oh, is it like Orange is the New Black? Is it like that HBO show Oz?" And I said, "No, no, no, no. This is like that weird episode at the end of the seasons of The Real Housewives where they all like inexplicably go on vacation together, but they hate each other." I was like, this is the group project from hell. This is, that was my quote. So they were like, okay, got it. Like,
Yeah.
perfect.
Aptly described. I was describing this book to somebody today, and I was, quirky characters. One of the prisoners has an emotional support iguana, and not only is that funny and quirky, but the iguana's name is Nacho. And she started to laugh. And she's like, "Oh my gosh, it's kind of like the White Lotus," because I'm talking about how they can bring in all their belongings from home. I mean, this isn't like you're serving time in a cell that is rather a store. It's, well, I can bring my comforters and my pillows and my Christmas tree and my garland, and I can bring my own food. They're not eating, typical cafeteria style food. I mean, it's pretty far out. And thankfully, I continue to read your acknowledgments to say, like, these things really do exist. So then I started to go down the rabbit hole online to figure out, where is this one near me? Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Part of why I did that author's note, and also the reason why I brought in the character of Russell, who is our lone male inmate, and
Hmm.
he's just there because he's being transferred from one state prison to another. He has been, legitimately incarcerated. He is an institutionalized individual who's been incarcerated for a long time. And he's the one who looks around and is just like, you all bat chick crazy. This I really want to have that perspective. But also on the author's note, I wanted to say, if we have alternatives to incarceration already, why aren't we using them? It's not immoral to me that pay to stay exists. It's immoral to me that it's only available to the rich. And when you have people who come in and are able to maintain connections to their lives, I think that's great. But when you have people who are able to stay within a bubble of privilege and therefore not actually ever be accountable for the harm they caused, now we're getting into some gray area. So it felt like a tightrope to walk. It was a real high wire because it was important to me to pull in that social commentary, but also, like, I want to read books that are fun. I want to laugh. I want to think people are bonkers. I want to be highlighting stuff or sending pictures to my friends being like, "Remember that crazy coworker we had? It's like this person," right? So to find the balance between that really intense social commentary about this giant, very broken system and have it be something that I want people to read on vacation, like, to hit that target was a lot of work.
Well, and I think you worked hard because you struck that note perfectly. I think that social commentary and having fun are not mutually exclusive. And so I think a lot of times books are these great things that give us an opportunity to talk about the tough stuff. So you're not talking, I'm not talking to you and questioning your choices. I'm questioning the nun's choices in this book, or the hippie Janet choices, or even Cammy's choices. So I think that helps, but you are right. The system is broken.
And it was also important to me, like, this is not Shawshank Redemption. There is no Andy Dufresne here. Like,
No.
they are all guilty. That's not the question, right? The question isn't someone is really, truly, purely innocent. It's like, well, they're all guilty, and now what?
Right.
Now what do we do?
And they all know they're guilty and they say they're guilty. None of them are running away from being
Mhm,
accountable for it.
mhm.
Everybody kind of has like their reasons for doing what they did. And so they never deny that they did anything wrong. But to your point is, can they be rehabilitated? And I think, to your point, maintaining connections with family and loved ones and perhaps even an employment, a job outside of your weekend stay, I think is a great thing.
Yeah.
And I'd be curious to know what the recidivism rates would be.
I
I
mean,
know,
I
big
think
questions in a fun
no,
book.
I mean, I think what's really fascinating is when you get into the data around recidivism, the people who are often the loudest of incarceration is broken, probation is broken, parole is broken. The people who are looking at the system going, this is not working. It's not achieving anything. It's the people who actually work in those systems. They're saying, I've got, you know, 500 parolees or probationees. I really only need to be hyper supervising 5, but I've got this 495 other people who can't get out of the system, and then we're both stuck with each other, and then the people who do need, deep intervention, deep supervision, whatever it is, they can't get it because there's no resources. And so to me, it feels like if we've already proven that, incarcerating people creates a cycle of incarceration, it impacts families, it makes people lose their homes, their jobs, even the people who didn't commit the crimes, all that stuff, and we keep doing it. It's like, guys, if putting everybody in jail was going to work, it would have worked by now, but it doesn't work. When are we going to try something else?
It's interesting because a couple weeks ago I had done a training, a simulation as if I had been in prison, and they had set up in the reentry center the tables with all the different resources that are available. And each person got a folder, and it was listed your name and what you were in prison for. And then some of them had, like, you did have a job. You had 5 bus tickets to start, and in order to get to all the resources, you had to use a bus ticket. And then there were, like, the wild cards, like, somebody would walk around and say, "Here you go," and it'd be like, "Oh, lost my phone, I have to, like, go get it replaced." And then it was done over a period of, like, maybe 10 minutes each section, and so you realize, like, you just run out of time and capacity to do all the things that you need to do to want to get your life back on track. And having gone through that, I was so frustrated and aggravated. I was like, "Oh my gosh, how do people navigate
They don't.
this?"
They can't.
No.
That's the reality. The systems in place are Byzantine. They go on forever. The paperwork is endless. What do you mean you don't have a printer? What do you mean that you can't show up tomorrow with 7 years of tax returns to prove that you can pay a certain amount of your restitution? What do you mean? Like, what do you mean you're going to lose your job?
Right.
Surprise, it's drug test day. And it's like, well, I have an hourly wage job and it's the only one that'll hire me because with a record, I'm excluded from most employment. It's like, this is the stuff where suddenly it's not that people recidivate, it's that recidivism is like the only easy path forward because every other door is locked. And then suddenly you're like, well, now I'm back at the beginning. And I really wanted to, and I put this in with Aisha, the character Aisha, where she's like, I didn't become a good person. I just had the time and money to perform being a good
Yes.
person. And that's not the same thing. And my real hope with this book in a lot of ways was like, I kind of wanted to start and have the reader start in one place. And at the end, not only to have the characters kind of shift allegiances and who they trust and who they don't
Yes.
trust and who they get to know, but also to have the reader shift and at the end go, why did you think that was a good person? Because they never said they were, but why did you think they were? Yeah, but to not have it be like a tisk, 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 but to say like, this is a moment to kind of reflect, like, why did you assume that so-and-so was good? And why did you assume that so-and-so was bad?
Besides
That's it. That's the big
besides Steve
question.
Bard, the officer, the creepy being a kid who was creepy and liking to manipulate, and his backstory. But you're right. And as a writer, you have set up their characters and their backstories and their interactions so well to give glimpses. But I felt as I was reading it, not only was it funny, I mean, there were like laugh out loud lines and full of some snark, which I'm always a fan of. However, I was off kilter, off balance, because just when you think you kind of have an understanding of why a character's doing what they're doing, it shifts. And you're like, oh, shoot. Like, to your point, Aisha is an amazing character. She's taking care of her dad who's sick and driving him, and they're originally from Turkey. And so she tries to convince him as she's driving to the clinic that the Pacific Ocean is really the water from back home. And that's a thoughtful gesture. You don't typically tend to associate that with somebody who would be in prison. So I think
Yeah.
it speaks to us as human beings. We're not all good. We're not all bad.
Yeah, and I think when you have a system that reduces people to the worst thing they've ever done, it doesn't allow them to continue to be whole people. And in many ways, what I wanted Bard to be is like he's the personification of the system, right? What does he do? He he manipulates, he never lets them go, he's constantly pushing on them, he's changing the rules all the time. He decides that what he wants is what he wants that day. And if they don't jump high enough, like that's it. They go like he is the system existing and them trying to desperately figure out how do I make this work?
Right. And what's interesting, I mean, this is not a spoiler because, he ends up being killed early on. But before, he was killed early on, he had put letters under each of their cells, basically because he was waiting for like everything to play out the next day. Unfortunately, he didn't live to see that. So it's incredibly interesting. And then when you glimpse when they're trying to decide, like, oh my gosh, he's dead, what do we do? Call the police. And that's when they're like, no, I don't think so. When have the police ever helped any of us? And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, that's right. Like, where do you go? What do you do? And you gotta love one of the characters was like, I used to work in the hospital and I watched over like 700 hours of forensic files. I know how to do this. I know we bag evidence. Like that's what we do. So they're trying to preserve things and to try to go about solving something. And at the same time, because I think in the very beginning, you described them as these 6 women, if not for their own bad choices, wouldn't have shared an elevator, let alone lived side by side every week. No cheerful greetings between them, or in some cases, barely an acknowledgement of each other. And so then you see when tough things happen, sometimes it brings people together and then alliances or so-called frenemies. It's a fascinating study just on human behavior alone that also happens to be entertaining amidst the big questions.
Yeah, and it was also very important to me that what is kind of made clear in a lot of ways is like when the prison system was working and they were going every week with Bard, they were not changing and they were not growing and they were not reflecting and they were not being accountable. And it's actually when they remove him and they have to kind of confront themselves and how they've been moving through the world and how they got here and the people that they're with and how they're treating them, that's when the growth happens. And to have characters grow is always the most gratifying thing as you're reading, right? To get to the end
Right.
and feel,
Oh, yeah.
I see how and why this person is different now than they were on page 1 or not. And then what does that mean? Where does that leave that character? So it was a book that felt difficult to write. And I grateful to any reader who read my first book, which was so like splashy and shiny, that
Mhm.
came along for this one, because I think on the surface first of all, it looks like a bummer, but also I'm really, really proud of it. And I worked
As you
really
should
hard.
be. Yeah. You should definitely be proud of it. And I think you do a great job to kind of capture that duality that's in all of us.
Hmm.
I mean, even Bard, yes, I describe him as you did as the creepy kid level, 10 creepy, but when they go into where they find him in his office and they open the door to his living quarters,
Hmm.
I was not expecting this. On top of all this was his seasonal decor, which he rotated religiously. As it was Christmas time, Bard had holly garland tacked along their ceiling with blinking lights. He had a kitschy nothing but tinsel tree with a tree skirt fluffed out to look like snow, and he had playlists for every season. I just think I did not see that coming. So
What's more fun than that as a writer, to bring a surprise?
yes, and there was throughout this book. I don't want to give any spoilers by any means, but I just was kind of astounded. And then I was also curious because of the introduction of Russell staying for a weekend because he was being transferred. And you think somebody who, I think he was year 6 into an 8-year sentence.
Yeah, I think it's like 6 into 14 or something. He's not getting out anytime soon. Yeah.
No. And so one would think that this is minimal security compared to what he's used to. And yet he doesn't want to leave his cell. Like, he's like,
Yeah.
no, no, I'll stay here. Like, he knew what was expected within those parameters. And even though there were opportunities to do different, didn't want to.
Well, I think he's the one person in that group who actually understands the institution that he's in and says, I to take a chance, it's not worth it. I know what happens. I've seen it. And I don't have the privilege blinders that you do where you think it's all going to work out. Oh yeah, call the cops. That's going to go great for you. Like he's like,
Right.
everybody in group has to have a brain. Like what's happening? Even he's talking to Bard at the beginning going, you don't know you have lost the edge. You don't know what I can smell something. I can smell tension, drama, like something is off. And Bard, waves him away. And then when the women think they're just going to we'll call the cops, we'll call our lawyers. He's just like, what are you talking? Look where you are. And I think there's a lot of ways too where, it would have been easier for Russell to just be like, I'm going to stay in my cell and you do whatever you want. And instead he's like, I'm going to save you a little bit from yourselves.
Yes. I mean, he's the perfect counterpoint to them and to their, dare I say, hysteria, because I shouldn't say that to somebody who has a degree in therapy. But there's something to be said for having that tension that exists now with him and the others, and then they're constantly turning on each other, trying to figure out what's what. And then I find it very interesting that despite them coming in with whatever food they want from the outside, and Cammie's mom lovingly makes her and prepares her favorite foods, that they still eat at the same time. There's still like this little bit of structure where people kind of come together. And I think at one point in the story, we'll get everybody eating because, when you break bread with people, walls kind of lower a little bit. People are a little bit more open, vulnerable, whatever the right word is, a little more authentic. And so I found that really kind of interesting that they would still eat. Okay, everybody, guess what? It's time for lunch. Okay, guess what? It's time for dinner. So, amidst the other quote unquote freedom and autonomy that they had moving about. And then all your wonderful references. Can I just say Weekend at Bernie's? I hadn't thought about Weekend at Bernie's in a long time.
Always a winner joke. You can never reference Weekend at Bernie's too much. That's my feeling.
No. And then I think there was even a Friends reference to the whole like pivot moving the sofa. Yes. I was like, this is awesome. So
I think there was even a Friends joke about Weekend at Bernie's that I always laugh at, which is like, what is Rachel's favorite movie? And they go, she says it's Anna Karenina or something. And Rachel's like, yes. And they go, but really it's Weekend at Bernie's too. And then Rachel's laughing. She goes, it is. It's like Bernie's. It's forever funny. It is. I don't even know if I've ever seen it all the way through. Doesn't matter.
No, I mean, it makes me want to go watch it after reading this book because it's so funny. And then just some of like the snark, like we're going to puppet a dead man so we can go to a morgue so we can solve a murder. Is this Mad Libs from hell? I mean, it's just, you have interjected humor amidst obviously the bigger question in terms of, is this really helping our society? People really becoming better or access to resources? But I have to just tell you, so many laugh out loud moments.
So bad. For me, the snark, it's like the snark and the violence and the social commentary are like my three poles. And I can go further in each one, the further I go in the other two. So like the funnier it is, the more social commentary you can do, and the gorier I can make it. And the gorier I make it, the more social commentary I can have, and the sillier I can make those tensions. It's like, if they're all right in the middle, okay, that's fine. But if I can make all of them go to 100, it gives me a lot of runway to just have some fun.
I mean, you referenced at one point cadaver Jenga, and like, again, can't help. But I love the fact that you're interplaying all of those three elements, your three tentpoles, as you say. How did screenwriting influence? Because I literally felt like, first of all, I think this should be a movie or a series or something, but literally felt like I was right there with them. That sense of place was incredibly good. The sense of the doors and the cells clanging and all of that, you captured that so well. And this is not an Anna Karenina tome of a book. So to be able to do that succinctly and still have that weight of an impact is fantastic.
I mean, I think it's a couple different things, right? Like the screenwriting piece is big because you just kind of really get like particular parts drilled into you. You need a character with a strong point of view who has natural conflicts with another character with a strong point of view. And you need people to make choices that create conflict. Like these are the things that you kind of really hit in TV writing all the time. You can't just have people kind of laying on the couch and they all agree with each other and nobody decides to do something. Like
Yeah, nobody
you,
would watch that.
yeah. So like what are the choices that are people making and that feel authentic to their character, right? And how are those and also like what is their higher goal? What is their biggest goal? What is their life goal, right? And are these choices getting them closer or further away? And do
Yeah.
they know that they're getting closer or further away?
That's the other great thing as readers, and because you all do such a great job of this as writers, is allowing us to kind of see inside their head and their brain into terms of why they're doing what they're doing, and it helps us. And at the same time, to your point, yeah, did they ever reconcile that that was not probably the right way to handle it? That self-awareness or emotional intelligence or whatever you want to call it sets up for some great scenes throughout this book, some great dialogue and working together to allegedly working together on things. Like even the guy who's the medical examiner, you introduce him, and I won't say his first line that he says when he walks into the morgue, but they have community service to do. So it's pay to stay and they have to do a little bit of work, whether it's gardening or sometimes it's duty in the
Roadkill.
morgue. And that's when I learned about contact juggling. I was like, what is that? So of course, got to look it up. And I was like, interesting.
But I think you made an interesting point before about like the sense of place, which is, in screenwriting, you have to find this balance, right? If you need people to move from point A to point B for a story point, you need to put that in the script.
Okay.
But you don't want to like overblock or over explain where everything is because it kind of robs the other, talented people that you're working with from their moment of art, right?
Right.
So
Okay.
unless it has to be a Picasso, just say there's a giant painting on the wall that looks like splotches and then see what the art department comes up with, right? Or if you don't need to know exactly where everybody is in the room, let the actors and the director figure it out when they do blocking because maybe they'll find something really interesting to do. And so with this book, I really needed it to be very clear where everyone was and what was happening because the locked room version of it all, nothing makes me crazier than when you have a locked room mystery and at the end it's like, it was a ghost. And you're just like, what do you mean it was a ghost? Like I wanted this to really hold water in terms of where is everyone? You know pretty much where everyone is all the time. So as a reader, when I'm reading these books, I'm thinking, I don't know who did it because I know where everybody is when these things happened. But I
Exactly.
also know everybody had this opportunity. Do I trust this person that they're telling the truth? Like that was super duper important in this book in a way that I didn't have to do with my first book. I could be a little more like they're in the kitchen, right? Where this is like, who's leaving first? Who's leaving second? Who's leaving third? Because I need to know who's in last, like all that stuff. So it's definitely, those are the parts of screenwriting that I think are just always going to be helpful and amazing. Is like those, that real sense of character, real sense of characters making choices, and then kind of knowing that balance of describe everything that's important and then also let things go that aren't important because you want to make sure that like you're giving readers the opportunity in a mystery. Like there was a wonderful review and I'm sorry, I can't remember the person who wrote it, but what I appreciated, they said it's a fair play locked room.
Yes.
And I thought, oh, thank God. Because it
Yeah. I
really
mean,
makes me,
every you because I guess when there's a crime, right? The first thing that people look for, besides who did it, is who has what motive. And almost every single one of them has a motive and a reason to dislike Bard. And so I think the tension that exists, I mean, I kept flipping page after page and thought like, I think I get it. I think I know where this one was, and then it flips again. So, like, when you're writing this, do you kind of write like that ugly first draft, get it all out, and then go back and edit in terms of where you put things so that you're not oversharing and tipping your hand?
Not quite. Again, from TV and screenwriting, I outline beyond, like just really long, very detailed outlines. Because for me, the way my brain works, the way I've learned writing is in the outline, you can find story problems before they happen on the page. So I'll do my outline. And then I generally write like a pretty intense first draft, like it's a lot of it's already there. And then it's just a matter of going over it like again and again and again. And it's like, I need to weave one thread through here. I need to go back. I need to weave one thread through here. Like, let's make sure everybody's in the right order when they exit or enter. When am I going to mention this little clue that comes back later that's important? Like in this one, it's like, who has the door pass? Like all those things, it's like, I know what the story is, and then I try to go back through with that, like one detail in mind to make sure that each little piece is in its place.
It's seamless. And I should also mention that you do this from multiple points of view. Different characters are telling the story. So not only are you making sure like the story is told and the common thread weaving through, but you're doing that from different perspectives, which I think is so fun to kind of see, the same thing, but from different perspectives.
That was definitely a fun way to explore characters' own blind spots, either about themselves or other people. So you would see one character do something, and the other character being like, what is going on? Why are they doing that? This doesn't make any sense. And then you see from the other character's perspective, and you're like,
Yeah.
okay. And
I
that
mean,
was a fun to play with bias. The character's own biases, their own limited points of view.
as we are, I think, as human beings, and somehow if we're emotionally intelligent enough to be aware of ourselves, then it tends to help us manage social interactions a little bit better. One would hope.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely there's a modality of therapy called dialectical behavioral therapy, DBT. And one of the skills that people learn is, they come in, they tell you what happened, and you go, okay, tell me that exact same story, but change everybody's motivation, change everybody's emotional experience. Tell me that exact same thing about showing up so late to the restaurant and the waitress was rude and your food was cold and you got in a fight with your boyfriend. Tell me the exact same thing in terms of the facts, but change it all. So we can start to expand the aperture of like what we're emotionally allowing to have happen, as opposed to, I know everything. It was just like this and I understand everybody's motivation and I'm furious. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
what if something else happened?
Right. And, I was always kind of taught to assume, I don't know what we say about assume, but that people's intentions were good or that they were doing the best that they could. And it's us who receive it who sometimes question or immediately make this snap decision that the person's a jerk or mean. Meanwhile, have no idea what happened to them just before that interaction.
Yeah.
You know, it's somebody give
Is it,
me like a great piece of advice that, I, as a librarian, right, work in public service. And sometimes adults come in and they're not always happy and they're not always respectful. And this person said to me, was a leader, and said, 99 times out of 100, Jen, they're going to know you and like you, but you don't know what they're coming from and you don't know what they're going to. And somehow, sometimes it comes out inappropriately. You had nothing to do with it, but they took it out on you. And you kind of give people grace.
yeah, is there a version of the story that has nothing to do with you and you're just there?
Yeah.
And does that allow you to give them more compassion and space for maybe not showing up the best because now you're not emotionally being invested? You can still be impacted, but you don't have to create a story around it.
Uh,
And
Such valuable advice and technique, I guess, is whatever the proper word is. Like, no wonder why you're good at what you do besides writing books.
I mean, then you just say to people, if you need to know if it was about you, you can just ask them. And if they say it was, then now you have a whole new set of information. And now you're working off of a fact. Now we've made that a new fact. And if they go, it didn't have anything to do with you, I'm so sorry, then you get to put that whole story you just made down.
Yeah. My God, sometimes we waste so much time in our heads, don't we?
It's where we spend all of our time, unfortunately. And that, as I like to say, this is not a reality machine, this brain of ours. It is a pattern recognition machine that is very broken. And just because it sees a pattern doesn't mean it's right. So,
Such wisdom.
I mean, it only took me 2 years of grad school and thousands of hours of training. So,
Yeah. And thousands of dollars for grad school, right? Still, I mean, I think that's great. Cammy has to be one of my favorite characters in this book. And trying to figure her out every time I thought I understood her, you hear a different perspective and how she rationalizes some of the things that she's done. And then, I mean, there's even this point where you talked earlier about we're more than the bad things that we've done that shouldn't define us. I think define or influence maybe, but she talks about the people that are there and they're upset because Russell's with them and, he's accused and serving time for something much more serious than any one of them. And she's kind of like campaigning to like be nice to him, like treat him with kindness because we're in the same boat. We're all guilty and spending time in prison. And I think sometimes she was the voice of heart and compassion
yeah.
kind of threaded throughout.
And I think it's easy for people to look at how she presents herself as this kind of like bimbo airhead and then decide somebody like that wanting you to be compassionate to write that off. That's just something an idiot would say. And it's like, well, why?
Yeah.
Would you have listened more if Aisha said it? Because she's kind of hard nosed and mean? Probably. Why?
Yeah.
Why isn't it right when somebody who maybe presents themselves a little more flighty, so now nothing they say makes any sense to anybody? That seems like an intense write off of the person's entire life experience.
Right.
So
And
yeah,
that's,
it was. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, that's how she grew up. It was like one incident that started
Mhm.
when she was a kid. And then that just kind of like defined her and her family. And we all, gosh, you're marriage and family counselor, therapist. So you get this, like all the roles we play in our family, and we can be like grown up adults. And then we go back home and we're like, it's like we never left. But we all assume roles within families, within work, teams. Think about my rowing team. We all have roles, whether we're aware of them or not. And there's one that's always the ringleader that organizes things, and there's one that's always, yeah. The human behavior is fascinating. So,
Jeff Jeff Carter, who is a great writer and an amazing podcast host, he asked a really salient question that I hadn't thought about this. And as soon as he asked it, I knew the answer immediately and thought, well, that was a brilliant question. I can't believe I stumbled into this beautiful theme. But he said, what's the difference in how like identity exists in your first book versus your second book? Because my first book is all like people who are Instagrams and they have these
yeah,
brands.
influencers. Yeah.
Yeah, influencers. And I said, I feel like my first book is about people choosing an identity and then kind of mushing themselves into it to project out to the world. And I feel like this book is the world saddling someone with an identity that they don't want and they're trying to figure out how to exist inside it. And so it felt like almost like a photo negative of both. And you see them kind of being like, I have this identity of a felon, of a criminal, of a party girl, of a gangster, as a drunk, as a nun. How do I fit into what that is that other people have decided is more important than when I say to them, that's not me? And they go, oh, yes, it is. And you're like, okay, I guess it is.
Yeah. Oh my God, we've all had those conversations. I think about Russell. He wrote an essay and
Mhm.
submitted it while he was in prison. And it it kind of speaks a little bit to this point when he said, I know it will feel impossible to rejoin a world that doesn't want me. Felon is a permanent status, and if you let it, it will chew away at your identity until it's the only word that is left.
Yeah, that's what the system wants to do. And I think Russell is someone who's trying to find a way through the system and retain his own interior self. And that's really hard work. And it can look like he's broken or, siloing himself in his cell, but he's really just desperately trying to hold on to his humanity in a system that wants to strip it.
And I think, there's this whole, I don't know if you're a fan of Brene Brown or not, but she talks a lot about fitting in versus belonging. And so it reminded me when they're all together trying to work on something, and fitting in is basically the people pleaser, doing what people want or what you expect. Tammy playing the role of the flighty, ditzy bimbo versus actually really darn smart and being able to be with people. And I feel like that the friendship that Russell and Cammy developed was more a belonging versus a fitting in, like
And
a
I think it was
genuine seeing each other.
the first time for both of them.
Yeah, which I
And how
think
they're
is heartfelt.
yeah, they're both like, "Wow, this is the greatest feeling in the world," and also, "I am a little unsure how to function in relationship to you. I don't." You wanna imagine that, like, as soon as you're like, "That's not who I am, and I wanna belong," that everything just falls into place, but it's its own journey, right? They're both like, "Ah, okay." Like, Cammy feeling like, "You see me, and that feels good, and also please stop."
Yeah, I mean, it's that whole, like, vulnerability hangover, right? Where you share something that's kind of messy, and then all of a sudden you, like, panic. You're like, "Oh my goodness," like, but she's sharing stories with Russell that she's really never talked about before, and him to her as well, and so there's something about holding space for individuals, because I think as human beings, I think don't we all just wanna be seen and heard?
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole goal, I think, of life is to be with people with whom you belong, who see you and know you and accept you, and also want you to grow and are excited for you to change, like, who aren't like, "This is it. This is great. Just stay like that forever." Like that.
Well, that's what I tell my nieces because 'cause they're growing up way too fast. Like, "Slow down. You shouldn't be
Oh,
driving yet."
I tell my child all the time, I'm like, "I want you to know that I paid a witch in the forest to keep you a baby forever, and now I'm starting to think that that was a scam, and it was just a random lady I gave money to." So, I'm mad not at you for growing up, but I'm mad at her for scamming me out of my keep my baby a baby money, and she thinks that's very funny, but
Aw, that is quite fun. That is something that she will probably reference, as will you, the rest of your lives.
I think it
"Damn
was just
witch.
some I think it was
Want
just an
my
old
money
lady in the
back."
forest.
Yeah.
Now that I think, well, she didn't do any magic at all, she just took my money.
How often that happens too, right? Scam.
Hmm.
Mhm. You see, like, a
Beware.
Dateline special on it, witches that promise to keep kids young.
It's coming. It
It's
is coming.
coming.
Well, the next influencer pyramid scheme. It's the next
This is so much fun. I wish I could talk to you even longer. It's funny what a great conversation this has been, just genuine and heartfelt, and dare I say, advocacy in terms of the system that is broken, and how can we, reading a book, be entertained and still take that lesson away to want to do different so that things change. That
a
is a
lawyer I
gift.
yeah, a lawyer I spoke to once about this. I said, "If everybody knows the system is broken, why doesn't it change?" And he said, "Well, for incarcerated people," he goes, "there's not a constituency for them." Meaning people don't care what they have to say. They're not interested in what their families have to say. There's no interest in changing this. And I would love it if one person reads this book and decides I will be a constituent who cares about incarcerated people. That would be huge. That great, done. I sold one book and it like that person changed and now I'm good. I don't need any. You can pull the rest of the shell. I got one.
I will talk a little bit when this is done about something I have coming up to speak to that constituency. So,
Can't wait.
yes. So, this is Stories End, the final 5 questions, right? If you could outsource one chore, what would it be?
Laundry.
Agreed. Cammie's favorite meal for her lowest mood is something that her mom packs for her. It's chicken adobo. What is your favorite meal?
Noodles in any form.
Amen.
Just a new like are we talking Szechuan? Are we talking a stuffed kind of pasta scenario? Give me any noodle.
Yeah, I was going to say between pasta and like God's most perfect tuber, potatoes, and the variety of ways in which they can be prepared, pasta's right up
'Cause
there.
I mean, gnocchi, baby, you get the pasta and the potato.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. It's like the Venn diagram Favorite meals. Janet has an emotional support iguana named Nacho. Do you have any pets? And if so, what are their names?
I have the world's most giant dog. I don't know what happened. I went into a state of psychosis and came home with a dog that is the size of a dining room table. She is a Great Pyrenees, and I don't know what happened. Jennifer, I don't know what happened.
It was another witch, right? Did you run into another witch that said this is going to stay little?
It was another witch. She was from the Las Cruces shelter, New Mexico. Her name is, prepare yourself, Philippa Pancake Popcorn Snowy Day, and we call her Pippa for short. And she is a polar bear in my house who just wants to be pet and snuggled all day long. There's literally no moment where she's like, why is no one petting me? And she'll walk over and take her giant pumpkin head and put it under your hand and just like stare at you like, if you move it, then you're petting me.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah, if it doesn't realize she's not quite a lap dog. So.
Oh, no, she does not understand why she's not allowed to sleep in the bed and wants to be on the couch, like laying on top of me. And I can't
Move.
Actually get her off. I have to call my husband to like heave her from the top while I push up. If I want her to move, I have to get the vacuum and like go zoom, zoom, and then she kind of like runs away. But I can't actually like move her. I don't know what I was thinking.
Does your daughter, you have 2 kids, right?
2 kids. I have a daughter and a son. They are obsessed with her.
Okay.
They are obsessed with her, and almost every single day we have very long, very intense conversations about what will be for Halloween. This is a real topic.
And it starts now.
And I also want to give a little shout out to our dog Jagger, who just died. We had him for 14 years, and he was so old. He was blind. He was deaf. He had to wear special shoes because he couldn't stay up, and he just died in the garden. And Jagger, I love you so much, and I miss you.
What a good home he had the time that he was here. Lots of love.
So loved. So loved. Beds in every room. So much cheese. My husband would take little cubes of cheese and put them in his food with hot water and a little bit of deli meat. That was his daily. He wouldn't eat it. He kind of looked at us like, guys, there's no cheese in my food. So that is the dog who got to eat cheddar every day.
Well, heck, I want to eat cheddar every day. So there is that. What would be the worst community service job?
I mean, the one that comes to mind is like when you work at an animal shelter and you have to like deal with abused animals or euthanize animals. I don't think I could do that. I think that would really break me.
All the prisoners, who would you want to be stuck in an Uber with?
Amy Fisher.
Awesome. And then
very popular, apparently, on her cell block. And you know what? Look into that case because she was a child and justice for Amy Fisher and justice for Lorena Bobbitt. Go back, look at those cases through 2026 eyes, guys.
Right.
Do it.
Yeah. We'll talk about another one off air. And then the final question, what song is always on a road trip playlist?
Paul Simon, Hearts and Bones.
Thank you to everybody who is listening. An even bigger thank you to Elizabeth, whose book Payback just published last month. It is a true locked room, or should I say locked cell, mystery with a cast of characters that is so quirky that it'll be hard to determine your favorite, and they all work so well together as an ensemble. Never has a thriller been so much fun to read, had me laughing out loud, so much so that people turned and looked at me. And at the same time allows us to examine the bigger questions and find ways to advocate for change. To find out who else is visiting, go to storytocount.com. This is Story to Count with Jen Jumba.